and welcome to my ranking of Doctor Who Series 11 or Season 37, which will include Resolution, even though it's not included on the complete 11th series DVD or Blu-ray, but it is included on Series 12. Hopefully Revolution of the Daleks will be included on Series 13. But unlike Revolution of the Daleks, I don't know why this one wasn't included on Series 11, because it should have been. Revolution of the Daleks just came a bit late to be included on Series 12, so it should be on Series 13's. But Resolution, that could have been on Series 11 easily. Just swap the release dates round for the DVD and Blu-ray and you've got it. Fair and simple, but no, oh well. Irritating. At least it's not as bad as Twice Upon a Time being absent from Series 10. There's no excuse for not saving Series 10 till after Twice Upon a Time broadcast. At least Resolution is included on the next Whittaker era series. Then again, if they re-release the Series 10 Steelbook, they might add Twice Upon a Time. They've been playing around with what's been released on the Steelbooks, which is slightly different to the Blu-rays anyway, for other series. But anyway, the Series 11 or Season 37 ranking. And I've got my companion here. I didn't mention this in the actual review. I said he was here, but it's the figurine collection Reconnaissance Dalek figure, number 157 in the range. The magazine in the collection. I've already talked about the Dalek itself in the review, so let's just get into the episode into the ranking of this series. Now, Series 11, before I start, this is probably one of the most controversial and unpopular series of the revived series, along with Series 12, and also probably Series 9, and also one of the least popular series of the entire show. This could range from whether or not you like the idea of having a female Doctor, a mixed race, mixed gender TARDIS team, the fact there are 3 companions in this series, the writing of the episodes, the amount of politics in said writing, or just your general enjoyment of the series overall. Heck, even a lack of series arc and how the character development was over the course of the series. So depending on your feelings about all of that, this series is going to be very mixed bag for a lot of people, and some people probably won't like it, but there are also people who like it quite a lot because it's trying to be new and fresh after so many years of feeling quite samey with Moffat, although Series 10 did try to change a bit of that earlier on. But after Moffat, I can see why a lot of people would like the new fresh approach with this series. However, I can also understand why some people can't get into this new angle, this new era, because either it's so different or they just don't think it's quite polished yet. And I completely understand both sides' feelings and opinions. So I'm just going in as a natural Doctor Who fan who's experiencing all of Doctor Who, or at least all of the television of Doctor Who, as well as much expanded media as possible. Starting off with the list of episodes, and these episodes are The Woman Who Fell to Earth, The Ghost Monument, Rosa, Arachnids in the UK, The Saranga Conundrum, Demons of the Punjab, Kerblam, The Witchfinders, It Takes You Away, The Battle of Ranskoor and Kolos, and Resolution. And I'm surprised I managed to say Saranga and Battle titles without fucking them up. Actually, I didn't fuck up any titles. Yes! And also, I did do this ranking back in 2019 after Resolution's airing. And I did mention I did re-edit it in 2020 after Resolution was relisted as a Series 12 episode, but then it went back to being Series 11. And so that re-edit, as I mentioned in the Resolution review, and Series 12's inclusion of Resolution are now outdated and embarrassing. I should have just left the Series 11 ranking on its own and just skipped Resolution for Series 12 and just done the series, or saved it until after Revolution had come out. But as I mentioned, I'm not going to re-edit those because I've got the new ones coming. This is the Series 11 one, and we'll get to the Series 12 one. So Series 11 ranking will be same episodes as from the original, but not in the same order, especially as Resolution is being included back on. So starting with number 11, this one is definitely the same as last time. We'll start off with what is still my least favourite episode of Series 11 and is now back in contender as my least favourite story of the Whittaker era, alongside with an episode of Series 12, but we'll see how I feel about that one after my revisitation review of that. The Saranga Conundrum. The Saranga Conundrum. This is the episode I just didn't care about. You get other fans will probably say the same about this episode and all other episodes of this series, but this one is just one I just didn't care about. And the story's all right, but it's just one I'm not too worried about. and I'm not too worried about the supporting characters. I don't mind having a male pregnancy. I don't, because he's an alien. He's an alien character. I'm fine with that, unlike a lot of other people, for absolutely no reason. But my issue with him is he's not necessary to the plot. He's just there to get Ryan Graham and this female doctor out of the way. Not the doctor, I mean another supporting character who goes on a little bit of a mini arc in her own right after a male doctor is killed. That is not a euphemism on what happened to the show, by the way. That's just there are two supporting characters. One's a guy, one's a girl. They were both doctors on this ship. The guy just got sucked into space, and the girl had to then go on this kind of mini arc to find confidence in herself, and then she was diverted to help Ryan and Graham with the pregnancy. This fighter pilot character is pretty good, though. I liked her, but I just didn't really care that much, in honesty. And the story's not really that interesting. It's good, but I'm not really that invested in it. And yeah, I think this is probably one episode too many for Chris Chibnall in this series. He's writing or co-writing all of the first 5, and then he's also writing 10 and the special. And that's about 7 episodes, and that's probably around the same number he does in series 12. He writes 5 on his own and co-writes another 3. Okay, that's actually 8. But those ones, there's more co-writes and allows more of the other writers to contribute more of their stuff to it. Whilst this time round, just one time. And I think this one was one episode too many. And he's not the only one. Russell T Davies wrote 8 episodes of series 1. But there was 13 episodes that series. And this one, it just feels like this episode could have been scrapped or written by somebody else, and it might have been a bit better. Or just have a different episode written by somebody else. I would have loved to have seen another episode written by another writer, or one of the other writers contribute a second script. Maybe Mallory Blackman writes one without Chibnall, and maybe Vinay Patel, or Pete Matee, or Joy Wilkinson. Not so much Edheim, but yeah, it just feels like one episode too many for Chibnall, and it clearly shows. I will say, however, I do like the Pating. I do like how it was just it's just a small creature that defies expectations of what we would see with the creature. I know lots of fans aren't fond of the Pating at all, but I honestly like the Pating, and I think it's a good twist with the monster reveal. So yeah, it's not the most interesting creature, but I won't say it's the worst thing ever. I wonder how many people just say it's the worst thing ever because it is a small creature. The adipose are small, and they're cute, and they're great. Moving on to number 10. This episode is also not very popular with the fans. It's not very well liked. And I think this one, it was good in places, but it could have been better overall. Arachnids in the UK. Yeah, there were points where I enjoyed this story, but I think we should have had a second draft of at least the second half of the story. The ending is probably the weakest of the series, or at least the weakest of the series following a not so great build-up, because we've also got Witchfinders, which is great for about 40 minutes, and then the last 10 minutes it falls flat. But I don't think Arachnids reached the heights of Witchfinders before the disappointing conclusion, so that's why this one's worse. So yeah, this one's just not that great. Jack Robertson is just a Trump parody in this episode. He's much better in Revolution of the Daleks. Or at the very least, he's better. Nadia and Jade are good supporting characters, though. I liked those, and it was a good episode for the fam to go around this hotel doing stuff, but ultimately, it's just not that great of an adventure. Maybe if that final act was a bit different, it might have been a bit better. Moving on to number 9, the series finale of the series, and I know a lot of people would say it's a contender for worst series finale, at least for the new series. This or the Hellbent or Ascension at the Sidemen Timeless Children. But in my opinion, I would say currently it's fourth to last, 9th overall for the new series ones, but that might change after I rewatch the series 12 finale, but we'll see. If this one was a normal episode, I think it would be a great episode. I think it would get a bit more positivity. Maybe not an all-time great or anything, but it's all right. It's pretty good. But as it's a series finale, not that great, really. Sorry. And that is the Battle of Ranskoor Ave Kolos. Or the Battle of Who Gives a Shit, as many people would probably say. As well, for starters, we don't see the battle. Secondly, it doesn't really have the same impact as a normal finale is, or even wrapping up a series arc. It does wrap up some character stuff with Ryan and Graham and the Tim Shaw, but ultimately it doesn't feel that much of a finale. It just feels like another episode that just happens to be last until we go on a few weeks break before we get the actual proper finale, which is actually the special, before we then take another year break. Oh yeah, we got another year break coming up. Great. But yeah, Battle for Ranskoor Kolos, it's good in places, but ultimately, overall, it just feels like a bit of a letdown when you were expecting something a bit more and a bit better for a finale. And as mentioned, with the lack of series arc, it doesn't really build to much apart from the return of Tim Shaw. The character-wise and character arc-wise, it does build up to something, and there are some stuff from other episodes which come back into play here, but only a few mentions like Yaz's watch or the sniper bots. There wasn't really anything like the spiders coming back, or the people from Saranga, the fighter pilots, or the Kerblam robots and their bubble wrap or something turning up in the episode to help, or the Vajavian. Just there was only a few kind of callbacks to some of the past episodes that kind of tie in with it, but not in a huge way, besides the character development and Tim Shaw's return. But there wasn't really any major tie-ins with this episode to past episodes, besides the character development. So it doesn't really feel like a fully earned finale. That, and it's very similar to the Pirate Planet from season 16 of the classic series. Not a blatant rip-off, it's just very similar to it, and I can't help thinking that that might have unintentionally dragged it down for some people. So yeah, Battle of Ranskoor Kolos. It's probably one of the most disappointing finales, but it's certainly not the worst, because Hellbent exists. I also prefer it to Dark Water, Death in Heaven, and Wedding River Song. Okay, number 8. We now get into really good episode territory now. I'm serious. I really enjoyed these episodes going forward. Starting off with the Witchfinders. Now, if the entire episode was like the first 35 to 40 minutes of this episode, this would be top 5 easily. But the final 10, 15 minutes, maybe not even that long, maybe just 10 minutes, the final 10 minutes drop this episode flat. It just flats like a stone, not even into water, onto a muddy ground. And not even alien mud, just plain mud. It's disappointing, but the rest of the episode is really great. Once again, like with Mallory Blackman and Chris Chibnall, and with Vinay Patel, Joy Wilkinson manages to capture the historical angle brilliantly, and the characterization of the characters in those episodes, and how putting the Doctor in this situation places her in danger once she gets accused of witchcraft. But that doesn't happen automatically. That comes through some clever writing. Yeah, Series 11 has clever writing. Who'd have thought? Well, I did, because I'm not being biased or cynical. But yeah, there's some good writing here. There's some great directing, some great characterization. It's not completely perfect, but it does build up the momentum and the characterization throughout the episode, just like the other historical stories in this series did, and we'll get onto those later. However, the ending falls very flat, and I'm fine with the sci-fi element in the story. It's just the way that it was revealed, executed, and handled in the final 10 minutes is where it all fell flat. Doing the sci-fi angle is, at least, doesn't mean there's any disrespect to the real-life victims of the witch trials and the witch executions. All of this would be a perversion of justice in today's standards, just like what happened to Rosa. And Rosa, it would not be allowed today. It would be against what justice is in the 21st century. And it was a horrible period for people, especially women, especially elderly women in smaller communities. It was horrible, especially in the Stuart times as well. And I think this episode captures that really well. And the sci-fi elements being included means that they don't disrespect anybody. But then again, once we get to what it is that's actually causing all of these problems, when it's revealed that it's the Morax and they're just this typical deep-voiced, warlike creature race, it just becomes disappointing at the end. This episode was so good for about 35 to 40 minutes, but the last 10-ish. Just were very disappointing. Which is why it's this low on the list as opposed to maybe top 5, top 6. Moving on to number 7. Now, this one is actually the biggest jump any episode of this series has had. It was originally my second least favourite story of the series. Now it's just missing off being in the middle. It Takes You Away. Now, I stand by my issues I had in the episode that I mentioned in the review, and I'm actually surprised I didn't put this below the Witchfinders after doing said review, and keeping it above Witchfinders. But I think the thing is, with It Takes You Away, it does the character drama really well as well, and it doesn't come to an unsatisfactory conclusion, unlike Witchfinders. I think because Witchfinders came to such an unsatisfactory conclusion, it really dragged the episode down. So the episodes that would not have been better than that one ended up being better than that one. The same happened with Smile back in Series 10. It started off really well, went on really well throughout most of the episode, and then it plummeted at the end. Not as badly as, say, Closing Time, but it still plummeted enough to have the episode knock down a few pegs and not be as high as it maybe could have been, and lower than some other episodes. It Takes You Away, I've kind of liked it more on this viewing because I wasn't really fond of it when I watched it the first time, and less so on the rewatches when I did my Universals review as well. But this time round, I thought the character stuff was really well done and the emotional stuff was really great. I stand by that. I don't really think the stuff in the buffer zone isn't very good, and maybe it could have picked up the pace a little bit more. And maybe the whole stuff with the there's supposedly a monster in the woods. What am I doing? Could have been expanded a little bit further, maybe up to the 25-minute mark, and maybe like if this was a classic series, that would be the cliffhanger. That it's not really a monster in the woods, and there's actually another universe, and they find Eric there. But yeah, it would probably have been better to take out most of the buffer zone. Sorry, Kevin Eldon, I did love your performance though, and I kind of just expand the other two bits and make it a bit more interesting, as well as build up the tension in the first half about what's outside there, but not be too slow and not take a lot of time. Just gradually build up tension like you did in Hyde, for example. Just a gradual build of tension. Regardless, It Takes You Away ended up going up in opinion, mainly due to the characterization and drama. However, I do stand by my negative points, which I mentioned in the Revisitation review. Number 6, and by the way, my mug is different because I went off to have tea after finishing up number 7. In the bloopers, you might even hear it. And then came back and got another mug to drink from. So, carrying on the list with number 6. Now, number 6 probably won't come as a surprise to those who've been watching the reviews, but if you haven't been checking out the reviews, this one might be a shock. The Ghost Monument. So, the Ghost Monument. This one's not that particularly fondly liked by the fandom. Most people just find it boring, dull, not really do much, but there are some fans of it out there, and I personally think it's a good episode. It's a very good episode. It is a bit slow, but it's good to have a relaxing episode, even though we just had a kind of a more slower paced first episode before that. But it's a pretty good episode. I like the 2 supporting characters we have in the episode that join the Doctor and Company. And whilst Art Malik's character, who's also in the episode, isn't that great, he does very good at playing a not very nice character. But Armstrong and Epso are great supporting characters. We also have the Remnants, which aren't the best villains, but they're okay for this story. The story of crossing this planet is great, and they have to avert danger, which the planet will throw at them, and that they learn that it's following experiments done by scientists on behalf of the Stenza, who are forcing them to do these experiments. And this could have been a running theme throughout the series. We could have had Stenza interference or relevance. Maybe they were the ones responsible for destroying the Fajavian homeworld in Demons of the Punjab, perhaps, or something. Just somehow connect more of these stories to Battle of Ranskoor have Kolos, just a little, but ultimately not so much. But it was more so that they could connect the race from this episode to the villain from The Woman Who Fell to Earth. But this is still a really good episode. Opening is really great with some great visual stuff. It's pretty action packed, and the reuniting with the TARDIS is really great. And The new TARDIS interior looks pretty nice. Like I said, it's not my favourite TARDIS interior or exterior, but they both look really great. Especially the exterior. I really like the new exterior. I say new, the current exterior, the current police box. It looks great. My favourite's still the 2010 one. I think it got a little bit of an update in the Capaldi era, but I really like the 2010 one, which was very much like the Peter Cushing TARDIS. But I still really like the current one. So yeah, Ghost Monument is a pretty good episode. I mean, it's not for everybody, but it's pretty good. Moving on to top 5 territory, and all of these stories are now 9 or 10 out of 10. What? 5, 9, or 10 out of 10 stories in Series 11? Shocking. Positively shocking. Well, in my opinion, yes, there are. And number 5 is Kerblam. This one is a more popular episode of this series, mainly due to how fun it is. It's a very entertaining episode, and yeah, it's quite a lot of fun. The only kind of downside of it is depends where you sit with the message of this story and how it's portrayed, and also with the villain themselves. They're not that great in the episode. I can see what Pete McTeague, the writer, was going for. It doesn't completely work, but I can see what he's doing, and there are parts that do kind of work for it. But other than that, it's a really fun episode. There's some great tension in it. There's some great mystery, some great character work, some great supporting characters, and great performances. I think generally across the board, this is one of the stronger ones with all of the actors and most of the all of the main characters and their actors doing pretty strong job. I mean, yeah, again, Yaz doesn't get a huge amount of personality in this one, but she does get some stuff to do, which is more than we could be said for some other episodes. But yeah, this is a pretty good one to showcase good performances from the cast and good use of the characters across the board. So yeah, great episode here. Moving on to number 4, and my little friend here is going to get very excited because this episode is Resolution. So, Resolution. This one I actually was kind of considering putting a bit higher after rewatching it, but I ultimately decided to keep it here. Like last time, and by the way, Kerblam is the same as last time. So is the Ghost Monument and the Saranga Conundrum. And so is the next one that will be on the list. But Arachnids Battle, Witchfinders have gone down 1. It Takes You Away has gone up 3, and the top 2 have swapped around. But yeah, Resolution. This is a brilliant episode. Really liked it. Brilliant stuff with the Dalek. Love Nicholas Briggs again as well, as I gushed over him in the last review. Both as the voice of the mutant Dalek and as the tank Dalek, which is the same creature, but the mutant is out of the casing for about 40 minutes, and then it goes into its new casing for 15, and then it's out again for the last couple minutes it's on screen. But yeah, Nicholas Briggs is fantastic as the voice of the Dalek in this episode once again. And as I mentioned in the review, has a nice little story where I tweeted about Resolution and said he did a fantastic job as the Dalek, and he retweeted back saying thank you. He commented to that tweet saying thank you. So that was nice, and I stand by my statement that he does a fantastic job in this episode, and he remains the god of all Dalek voices. Worship him! Worship him! Worship him! But in all seriousness, worship him, damn it! He does so much for the Doctor Who expanded media range and for voicing so many monsters and creatures in the new series. Besides the Dalek, we also have some good character development and growth, and the character arcs coming together in this episode that we've seen going over the series with, and Ryan and his dad recollecting, although it does feel a bit out of place in the epic Dalek adventure story, but it's still handled really well. And again, the main characters, with possible exception of Yaz, don't really get an awful lot to do. The supporting characters are really good, and it's just a heck of a ton of fun. Some things don't quite work, like that stupid Wi-Fi joke, unless they got, I don't know, Doctor Who alumni and their families, like Colin Baker, for example, and his family see Five-ish Doctors reboot for an example of that. If they did something like that, maybe it might have worked, or at the very least, we'd be more gushing over the inclusion of Doctor Who alumni and their families, or celebrities and well-known people, as opposed to cringing over that joke, which would have passed us by, maybe. But no, it's just a boring family and a flat joke. They might as well have cut it and just ended on Ryan saying, "What a monster." That would have been a much better joke to the whole Daleks stealing the Wi-Fi thing, using the Wi-Fi to call the Dalek fleet, which means no one else can connect to it. That would have been a much better joke or funny line to end on. I'm also not so keen of what happened to Unit in this episode, and that's going to be sticking throughout Series 12. We might get them back in Series 13, fingers crossed, or Series 14. They're doing something with Time Fracture at the moment. Some Unit's personnel have gone off to do that, but besides Time Fracture, we're not seeing Unit again just yet, which is a shame because the last time we saw them was at the end of the Return of Dr. Mysterion, and we didn't really have a story with them in Series 10. So, yeah, now, or 11, and now they're gone, for now anyway, apart from some of them doing the Time Fracture thing. But regardless, Resolution is still a ton of fun and a really, really great episode. Such a brilliant episode. It's not perfect, but it's a ton of fun and really enjoyable, and a great New Year's Day action adventure romp. You did well. I might have put in this story third on my ranking if they took out that Wi-Fi joke, though. Moving on to the actual third place story is the series opener of Series 11, and one of the stronger introductory stories for a new Doctor. Overall, if I was just talking new series, it would come in the middle. The Woman Who Fell to Earth. This is a great introductory episode. Yeah, it's a bit slow in places, but slow and steady, build up the story, introduce the characters, some great interactions. It is a shame that Grace dies, but that does set in motion the character arcs for Ryan and Graham later in the series, and the whole series is about grief and getting over the grief. And as I mentioned in the review, it does show consequences for the Doctor Who universe. You don't do a Stephen Moffat where, oh no, they're dead, bring them back like 5 minutes later or 2 episodes later or something. Whilst Bill's exit was nice at the end, it still fell into that same trappings of killing a character just to bring them back, or just supposedly having a great death and then bring them back for no reason. Clara. But Woman Who Fell to Earth established the tone, what we were going to go for. We established what the series was going to be like, and whilst not every episode afterwards would quite live up to the same achievement, or even achievements of episodes on the same level, it's still a really effective opening. And yeah, a little bit slow in places, but it still worked really well. Tim Shaw was an effective villain in this episode, not so much in Battle Ranskoor of Kolos, and there was some good dynamics between the team, although they would get better in other episodes later down the line, such as Resolution, Kerblam, and the next episode I'm going to talk about. But overall, Woman Who Fell to Earth is a very good start to this polarizing series, or at least in the eyes of the fan base. I personally, I like it. I like this series. It's not perfect, but I like it. And heck, even some of the new changes and new feels that I felt it was doing after the Moffat and RTD eras felt kind of like each other for the most part. Well, these Moffat eras wasn't too different to RTD at the time when it started, but Chris Chibnall's era was definitely very noticeably different when I first started watching it. But after these rewatches and after going through this marathon, it doesn't feel that much different anymore. I guess I've just gotten used to it because it's been around for about 2.5 years. So I'm okay with it. And in fact, I like quite a lot of this series. So yeah. And I think The Woman Who Fell to Earth is a very good start to it. But we've got 2 10 out of 10 stories to wrap up this ranking, starting off with number 2. And surprisingly, this one actually dropped down to second place. I didn't expect this to happen, but this actually dropped to second place after I saw my number 1 again. After rewatching my number 1 choice, what is now my number 1 choice, my original number 1 has now dropped to number 2. And that is Rosa. This episode handled its themes so perfectly. I know not everybody's going to enjoy the more political stories of the show, but it's science fiction. You're going to have fucking politics in science fiction. And on top of that, this is also history. You're going to have politics in history. Maybe not all the time, but you're going to have it from time to time. And this is a story which teaches us about racism, segregation, and all that stuff that happened. And yeah, it's not the nicest subjects to talk about, but we got to learn about it. We've got to show it. We've got to see what we were like so we can avoid doing it again in the future. That's the whole point of doing something like this. So Rosa is a very good story on showing that. I will get the negatives out of the way. Krasko isn't a very good villain, and his motivations are even worse. And that's about it. That's about it. That's it. That's my only negative of this episode. Nope, it's almost perfect. Besides that, it's great. Maybe it can be hard to watch on a couple of viewings, but a few more viewings later, there might be some fun moments you might discover. That's what happened to me. Very hard to watch it on the first viewing. Very reluctant to rewatch it again, but still did, and it was still difficult to watch on the second viewing. But the third viewing actually wasn't as bad, and it wasn't reluctancy to watch again because it was bad, nowhere near. But it's just very difficult to watch. But that is again the episode doing something good. If it's hard to watch because of the themes and what's happening in the story, then it's working because you're making the audience think and feel as how the people in this story are being treated by other people. So the black people in this story are being treated by white people, and whatever skin color you are, you feel what the black people are feeling, and the white people who actually like them and supporting them are feeling by that other white people are causing harm or problems for them. You feel that, and that is a sign of a story, a film or TV episode or piece of media doing something right. If it didn't, then it wouldn't be doing its job right. It wouldn't be succeeding. But thankfully, Rosa does a fantastic job at handling the situation, and it does it masterfully. And if it didn't, it'd be doing something wrong. Also, massive shout out to Vinette Robinson for playing Rosa Parks. She's probably the best guest actor of the series, and she just basically becomes the character. She becomes the historical character. She's that amazing in the role. And this is also one of my favourite episodes featuring the TARDIS team as a team, as the four characters actually working together really well to get stuff to do. There's some pretty distinctive personalities between the four of them, especially a good one for Ryan. And yeah, so it works really well. Like I said, my only problem was the weak villain and his even worse motivation. That's it. Even if it was still a difficult watch on the third time round, that would be just more of a personal thing rather than what the episode was doing wrong. Because if it wasn't so difficult to watch on at least the first time round, and if it wasn't so poignant, and if it didn't make you feel and emotional, etc., then it would be doing something wrong. But it doesn't. It manages to do that, and it does it brilliantly. I know that might not sound like a great thing, but it manages to do its job with flying colours, especially on if you watch it, especially on a first and maybe second viewings. But like I said, once you've done a few viewings, you might start to have a bit more fun with it, and might even experience a couple of fun moments, like when the TARDIS team go off and have a few fun moments. So, Rosa, still a fantastic episode. And now we come to number one, a story which I initially gave 9 out of 10 on my first viewing, although still would have come number 2 on the original ranking, but then went up to 10. And then I rewatched it because I thought it should go up to 10 before I rewatched it. And then I rewatched it, and not only did I say, yes, it should be a 10, but it's now my favourite episode of the series, and currently my favourite episode of the Whittaker era. Demons of the Punjab. Like Rose, and also the first 35-40 minutes of The Witchfinders, this is a great historical episode, a great historical adventure that makes us feel for the characters that are here, whether they're historical figures who are acting as characters in the story, or original characters who are here for the story to be about. And yeah, it's another fantastic historical. Negatives out of the way. The Vajavians, you could argue, didn't need to be in this story, but their inclusion does make a lot of sense, and it works for the story. But yeah, that's it. That's my only criticism of this story. And when that criticism can actually be debated, whether it's a negative or a positive or in the middle, then you know this episode is doing something right. When the worst thing about it can actually be debated whether it's being done right or wrong. So yeah, this is a brilliant episode where we kind of focus on Yaz's family, even if Yaz herself doesn't get a huge amount of additional focus, but we get a nice little bit, and it's great seeing her grand's past in Punjab and this historical event going round. And because the partition of India and Pakistan was such a big event and there were so many people there and so many people died, then it was a brilliant idea to have this Romeo and Juliet-esque story around Yaz's family at the time when they were living there during these events and the tragedy that followed the wedding that happened on that day. And yeah, it's just absolutely brilliant and so good. Such an amazing episode. It's also one of the best visually looking episodes and one of the best directed. This one is directed by Jamie Childs, who directs 4 of the episodes in this series, including the opening and the finale, and also It Takes You Away, and he does an outstanding job with this episode. It's just magnificent. There might be a few slow bits that some people might not like, but personally I think that they're really great, especially in the middle before the Doctor realizes what the Punjabians are really like, and the knowing about a certain character's death. And like Rosa, they can't really do anything about it. They can only just go along with it for a time, but they can't do anything to stop this character dying. Just like they couldn't really stop Rosa being arrested. Otherwise, history would change. In both cases, history would change, and time would be fucked up. So the stakes are pretty high, even if it doesn't seem that way initially. But yeah, this is just a magnificent episode. It's just so good. And it's quite an emotional one too. These 2 historical episodes are brilliant, and they managed to succeed with bringing that emotion to the forefront. Witchfinders also does that too, but it's not quite as successful due to the ending kind of falling flat. And whilst the sci-fi elements, I can see why they were there, don't really work as well as these other 2. But Rosa and Demons of the Punjab, magnificent episodes, and Demons is officially now not only my favourite episode of Series 11, but also currently my favourite episode of the 13th Doctor's era so far. And both these episodes are going to be in my top 10 episodes of the 2010s. If you can guess already, they're going to be in my top 10 2010s stories ranking, which will be the next ranking coming along. So, to wrap up this ranking, number 11, the Saranga Conundrum. Number 10, the Arachnids in the UK. Number 9, the Battle of Ranskoor with Kolos. Number 8, the Witchfinders. Number 7, It Takes You Away. Number 6, the Ghost Monument. Number 5, Kerblam. Number 4, Resolution. Number 3, The Woman Who Fell to Earth. Number 2, Rosa. And number 1, Demons of the Punjab. And like with the last revisitation ranking, I'll do at the very end the original ranking compared to the to this ranking, so you can see what's been different. The most notable change of this ranking is It Takes You Away bumping up 3 spots from where I originally put it, and the top 2 swapping round. Apart from that, it's not really that noticeable, especially Ghost Monument to Woman Who Fell to Earth. But yeah, as I mentioned, I like Series 11. I think it's a good series. I don't think it's as polarizing as a lot of people making out. I don't think the writing's as bad as a lot of people saying, but that's personal opinion. And there were some stories that I was a bit harsh on due to the story writing. Even It Takes You Away, which I've now bumped up to an 8 out of 10 and is bumped up to 7th place on this ranking, and has gone above Witchfinders, which had some great writing for about 35 to 40 minutes. Even that one I still had my issues with, and I felt like there could have been improvements, but I put it above Witchfinders due to the emotion. But maybe I should have put it below Witchfinders. Well, it's too bloody late now. But yeah, I still thought there was some pretty great writing in this series, especially in the top 5 episodes. Those ones had some really great writing for the most part, especially the top 2. Those 2 are near perfect. It's just Krasko is kind of the only weak link in his motivation in Rosa, and then in Demons, you could argue the aliens weren't necessary, but I don't mind them. In fact, I think they actually work in the episode that we got. But the Demons of the Punjab would be an outstanding episode, whether you had the aliens in or not. So there we go. That's my Series 11 ranking, or revisitation ranking. Thank you so much for watching. Next time is the top 10 best Doctor Who stories from the 2010. So basically every episode from the End of Time Part 2 to Resolution. Because 2019, unfortunately, we had another year gap. Although, thinking about it now, it might have been a good idea. Because even though we had only 1 episode of Doctor Who in 2019, we are going to be getting more than 1 episode of Doctor Who in 2020 and 2021. the pandemic years, and hopefully more than one in 2022, but we'll see about that. We might only end up with one. We might get two if we're lucky. We might get a whole series if we're lucky, or at least a cut down version of a whole series, like Series 13. But we'll see how that goes. That's next year. Even though we only got one episode in 2019, looking back on it now, perhaps that might have been a good thing, because we got more than one episode in 2020, and we're going to be getting more than one episode in 2021. Miracles come in small doses, would you know? But it would still have been great to have more than one episode in 2019. But unfortunately, we do only have one episode in 2019. And with the next episode, Spyfall Part 1, coming on New Year's Day 2020, that means we now have to do the top 10 stories from the 2010s. That's every episode from The End of Time Part 2 to Resolution. And by the way, I'll be counting End of Time as a whole story on the ranking. And it would count as a story from the 2000s and the 2010s. From my perspective. Same for Haunted Nymon from the 70s and 80s. 1970s, 1980s. Although End of Time won't be on the actual top 10, I'll just put as an honourable/dishonourable mention of the 10th Doctor. I say honourable/dishonourable because that's his only story from this decade. As incumbent incarnation, and the other three, 11, 12, and 13, will get honourable and dishonourable spots, and then episodes from their eras in the top 10. See you guys next time for the top 10 stories from the 2010s, and then we'll be on to the Series 12 reviews, starting with Spyfall. Series 12, or Season 38's first 2 episodes, and by the way, this was Season 37. We've got one more season left, and then we're up to date. Woo! And then we can start getting excited for Series 13, Season 39. So, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the Nicholas Payne YouTube channel.